We're being led by the Holy Spirit.
What makes you happy? How many people pray for things that will make them happy?
Yes.
I mean, people pray for all sorts of things, but often, it's for stuff. People pray to win the lottery. That'll make them happy. Or a new car. That'll make them happy. Or a new job. Bigger house. More money. Fewer bills. That'll all make you happy, right?
Yeah, fewer bills.
What does really make you happy? If you have a Bible, turn to John 4 for a minute. John 4 is that familiar story about the woman at the well. But there's a part of that story which is not usually mentioned. Jesus came to Samaria after coming across the desert. And it says he was wearied with his journey. He was hungry, thirsty, and probably tired. Now, something that would make a person like that happy would be food, drink, and rest.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what the disciples felt. So it says in verse 4 that they went into town to get something to eat. In verse 6. In the meantime, the Samaritan woman gave him something to drink. Down in verse 31, it says the disciples came back. And they went out and came back to him, and he was no longer hungry. They actually pleaded with him to eat something. But he said to them, I have meat to eat that you do not know of. The disciples therefore thought that someone else had given him something to eat. He was happy even though they had not given him anything. Back in the Old Testament, the Israelites wanted to be freed from the bondage in Egypt. And they prayed for years to be freed from the bondage. And eventually, God did just that. So he took them into the wilderness, and they had nothing to eat. And as it says in Exodus 16:35, he ended up giving them manna to eat. Now, manna is a coriander type material that was laced or added to with honey. And it was something that God gave them every day. They had to pick it, they had to gather it up, they had to make it into some kind of a meal or a biscuit before they could eat it. This was a very nutritious substance because it kept them alive, sustained them, gave them energy, gave them their needs for 40 years. For 40 years they ate manna. Gathered it, picked it up, made it into something, ate it. Day in, day out. Week in, week out. Month in, month out. Until they were fed up to their earballs with manna. They had prayed to be released, and they had been given everything they needed by God, but now they were not happy with it. Numbers 11, verse 5 tells us that they complained, who will give us flesh to eat? We remember the fish which we ate in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. Now they prayed to go back to Egypt, where they had everything that they wanted, or so they thought. They were no longer happy. They had everything that they really needed to sustain them, but they weren't happy. What makes you happy? They were bored. We get bored very easily these days. We actually get bored with church because it seems to be the same thing, the same messages, the same music. People get bored with church. They get bored with their life. They get bored with their jobs. They have enough to sustain them, they have everything they need, but they're not happy with it. They weren't happy with manna. So God said, I will give you something to eat. So he had a wind come in and brought quails in from the sea. Verse 32, 33. And the people rose up all that day and all the next day and gathered the quails and ate, while the flesh was between their teeth. The anger of Jehovah was kindled against the people, and he smote them with a very great plague. And the name of the place was called Kilbroth Hattivath, or the grave of craving. They died because of what they prayed for. How many times are we not satisfied with what we have, and people try something different? People try something outside what they should be doing. They're not happy, so alcohol's going to make you happy. Drugs can make you happy. Fooling around sexually can make you happy. Sure. People do all these things, but they don't really become happy.
No.
They have everything that they need, but they don't become satisfied by it. It says in Revelation chapter 2, verse 17, that those who overcome these temptations, those who overcome the deceptions, those who overcome the deceptions of Balaam, will receive the hidden manna. What's the hidden manna? Go back to John for a minute. John chapter 6. And it says there, verses 31 and onward, that our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, as it is written, he gave them bread out of heaven to eat. Jesus therefore said unto them, truthfully I say to you, it was not Moses that gave you the bread out of heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread out of heaven. For the bread of God is that which comes down from heaven and gives life unto the world. They said therefore unto him, Lord, give us this bread. And Jesus said, I am the bread of life. He that comes to me shall not hunger, and he that believes in me shall never thirst. But I said unto you that you have seen me, and yet believe not. All that which the Father gives me shall come unto me, and him that comes to me I will no wise cast out. Back to John chapter 4 again. Because it said, after he said, I have meat to eat that you know not. The disciples therefore said, hath any man brought him something to eat? And Jesus said unto him, my meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to accomplish his work.
Yes.
I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look in the fields, that they are white unto harvest.
Yes.
Christianity is something that should never be boring. But people tend to get bored with it. And many people leave the religion, leave the faith, because they are bored. They think some other religion is going to be better and give them something more. It is something that never happens. People get bored with manna in the wilderness. But Jesus is the true manna.
Yes.
And if we look to him, we will never hunger or thirst.
Yes.
And there's nothing about him which is boring or mundane.
That's true.
That's so true.
What makes you happy? Only knowing Christ and spreading His word
Yes.
is the source of true happiness.
Yes.
Amen.
That's something to think about.